like to know about certain aspects know
Hello,
about clinical
hello, hello,
research or
hello.
clinical trials. So thank you very much for giving such a good opportunity and also very proud to be with such great dignitaries who have contributed a lot to the pharmaceutical science in India.
Asya?
We'll begin with the current
ये मैं आपको
topic
इधर
will
डालूंगा,
be
इधर
under
डाल।
science topic. And then we can
ब्लूटूथ है
discuss
जस्ट
what we
इधर
can
से
know about it or learning points with respect to the discussion of it. So, why clinical trials started in India? What is your role in that? How can you establish yourself in a hospital? Is what I will be discussing about. My area of interest is working as a clinical pharmacist or a pharmacologist in a hospital setup. I feel that can make a lot of impact and a lot of changes to the patient treatment outcomes, and you will be contributing a lot working with a lot of medical oncologists and other specialty persons, and can improve the patient care to the maximum extent. So I was one among you sitting here. I usually used to sit in the last and didn't bother about any of these things because I thought, yeah, what is there? There is no career. I'm going to go to abroad, do something, and come back here, or all the current mindset what everybody has. So, but then it changed. I thought, okay, why not take up a fellowship here? Why not take up a residency program in India and explore what is there and see if that doesn't work out, I'll go abroad. So I took up this onco pharmacy fellowship program at Shankara Cancer Hospital, and it was very interesting to know that my recommendations or my suggestions made a lot of impact. Many of the medical oncologists or hemato-oncologists were very keen in working with me and took my suggestions very seriously, modified the treatment regimens for so many patients, and which led to improvement of their clinical condition. So at the end of the day, you need some fruitful outcome for you to be happy from your job, right? So that was something which I got out of the fellowship course, and I thought I should do this more. I should do this at this particular institution, which gave me an opportunity to establish myself. Okay. So this is Sri Shankara Cancer Hospital. We are a 500-bedded cancer hospital as well as a research department. So we conduct clinical trials, we conduct molecular research, we do PCR, Sanger sequencing, all types of research in our hospital setup. This is our clinical research department established very recently. So we work with around 5 clinical research staff who are highly experienced and trained very frequently, and they do a really good job and help me keep both the aspects of my profession at very ease. So this is our transplant unit, state-of-the-art transplant unit. I was the one who helped setting up this transplant unit. We are an 8-bedded transplant unit. We do both pediatric and adult transplant, both allogenic and autologous. So right from developing protocols to the transplant patient, to finding out whether the interactions are causing the drug levels to go high or low, and doing PK studies over there. This is like my baby, which I started, and it's going on really well. So this is my favorite quote. So it says that modern medicine advances help millions of people live longer and healthier lives. So we owe to these improvements to decades of investment in clinical research. So I feel that to whatever advancements we have now, evidence-based medicine is the only reason why we have so many advances, so many new treatments, right? So we should be a part of this and contribute a lot to this and improve the medical care in India so that many patients who cannot afford it or who don't have the access to certain treatments can get it in India. Say when I started my oncology career, there were 10 monoclonal antibodies. I think you know what is a monoclonal antibody, right? These are very expensive and works very wonderfully with very minimal side effects. Right now, I can see around 25 to 30 monoclonal antibodies within a span of 5 years, right? That is such a great advancement in the medical field. And all these are accessible to patients in India. So they need not import it, pay a lot of import tax and other things. This is accessible in India. This is because of clinical trials which are connected in India and other developments in the regulatory authority also. So she is my favorite example for evolution of clinical trials. Okay, she's Emily. She was 5 years old when she was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So acute lymphoblastic leukemia and pediatric patients are usually the easiest and straight approach for treatment. But then she had a very bad genetic variation or mutations. She did not respond to any of the chemotherapy. She underwent a transplant, allogenic transplant with one of her siblings who was a complete match, failed that relapsed disease again. So her chances of survival was less than 10% with the existing condition. That is when CAR-T trial was started in the US. CAR-T is chimeric antigen therapy, T-cell antigen therapy. They just take the T cells out of your body. You know, B cells and T cells play a major role in the immunity factor in your body, right? So they take that out and they modify it and put it back into the patient so that it can fight against the cancer cell. This is the concept of CAR-T, and her parents were very brave to enroll her in that because she had very slim chances of surviving with any other treatments. Now she's 17 years old, going to college and leading a normal life, cancer-free. So she's one of the motivation for me to do clinical research or start clinical research in my hospital so that I can see many of them, I can create many Emilys so that they can lead a normal life. Okay. So coming to today's topic, establishment of clinical trials in hospital setup. So why are you required to do this? Because you are someone with lot of therapeutic knowledge, you're someone with lot of clinical knowledge, you have someone with lot of statistics and administrative and also research-based trigger is there in you, which can help you set this up in India. So a CRU or a clinical research unit or a CRD is a bridge between the sponsor and the investigator. So three parties are usually involved. One is the sponsor, you are the middleman, and then there is the investigator or the consultant who drives the clinical trial, right? So without you, it will be impossible for either the sponsor or for the investigator to drive a clinical trial. So this is very important. So as it says, the success of clinical trials need a very high quality data. All your sponsors will be behind you asking for data. There is one in front of me, she'll talk to you. So high quality data is required, which requires lot of attention, lot of rigorous work. So you should be working mentally, physically, as well as administratively. So that is very important. Coming to timelines, they give you very strict timelines. 2 days you have to finish this, 3 days you have to finish this, and your regulatory authorities give 24 hours times to finish this, right? So say you take a life science person who has done a BSc, MSc or something. I don't undermine their capacity. My research staff are from life science background, okay? So they do a tremendous amount of work with a lot of experience in that field. They have 8 years experience, 5 years experience in that field. But somebody as you who can just have 1 year of experience and do the same amount of work, what they do in a much more quality way and in a much more stringent aspect, which makes the sponsor come back to us again and again with many studies. Okay, so the timelines need to be met. Clear communication. You are very well versed in the communication. You study 6 years of various subjects, and you need to communicate every time with your colleagues or with your teachers, right? So communication is very important. You should have the knack to convince the patient as well as convince the doctor with every aspect. And you need a team of dedicated professionals. You alone cannot do 10 trials at a time because every trial has a protocol which needs to be read properly and understood time to time, right? They make new amendments, they make new changes in the protocol. So it requires a lot of time for you to get adapted to it. So you need a team who can work together with you and establish this. And with proper infrastructure. So your hospital will provide you that. You just need to push them. You need to tell them that this is what you need for the department. This can help them to get better name in the society. You can help patients also. So an infrastructure with respect to your institute where you are working, as well as an SOP. You put together an SOP called as a site SOP. So based on that, you drive all your regular processes. So this is what a clinical research unit or a clinical trial department do in a hospital. So why India for trials? So all these years we have heard trials going on in US, UK, Japan, China, South Korea. All these are top centers where research goes on. Right now, India is a hub. Why? Because of three major points. One is diverse patient pool. We have patients from all races, all ethnicities, and various disease conditions, various mutations. You find many of them. So diverse patient pool is what we have. Qualified investigator. We don't need some consultant who works in Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic to run this. Somebody from AIIMS New Delhi or somebody from just a medical college in local state would be much qualified to drive these trials, and a clinical research professional. So they in the US or any other Western countries have established course for these programs, as well as in India. We have very good courses in India to teach you. Your PharmD itself is more than sufficient. You read more about clinical trials in the 6 years course. So that makes you a person as a very good clinical research professional who can drive the trial smoothly. Okay, so you would need a good quality, authentic and relevant research to get evidence-based medicine which can help the patients. But one thing which we lack is quality check, right? Right from any product you buy in India, quality check is little less. So you can do that. You can create the quality checks at different points of time in the clinical research. Make sure that it goes flawless. You don't commit any mistakes and do it very well. So that can be done by you and driven by you. So this is the 2012 data which I want to show you. So from the US trial registry, where the sites other than India and the Asian countries had much more clinical trial sites. But currently, if you see the 2024 scenarios, we are one of the top countries recruiting patients and doing much more clinical trials in India. So this is a developing field in which you can, put forth your interest into and develop yourself, and it could be a great career path for you. So what are the factors that contribute to the success of a clinical trial? So as I told you, a professional site management or a clinical research unit plays as a bridge between both the sponsor and the investigator. An investigator alone, so he'll be a consultant, cardiologist, say medical oncologist. His job is to treat patients. He'll have a patient pool of 100, 200, seeing OPDs every day in and day out, managing emergencies. Right? So it will be difficult for him to put forth the documentation, find the patient, recruit a patient for trial. All these might not be very feasible on a day-to-day basis when you see. So in this point, we come to help and we try to encourage them. We try to provide them the support which they need to drive a clinical trial. And only being in a good clinical practice doesn't warrant you to be a good researcher. You should have that trigger in you which can make you a good researcher. You should have that interest to know more and more about things, what you read about. Ask question every time when you find something interesting. So that will make you a good researcher in the future. And also, as I told you, it encompasses a lot of documentation, logistics, administrative skill, and non-medical talks as well. This could be a boring part of the clinical research, but then, when you get something done from an administrative person and your trial runs smoothly, you will be the happiest person doing this. So non-medical talks include nothing but finances. Your management will also be happy when you do non-medical talks and get the finances done from your sponsors, right? So that can also contribute a lot to the current institution where you work for. So this is just a Center for Watch surveys which tell you what are the factors that delay a particular study to initiate or delay a particular study to complete its desired course. First thing is contract and budget negotiation. So if it is left only to the sponsor and only to the person conducting the trial, that is your consultant doing it, it will take a lot of time. It will take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, right? So you are the person who drives it. You set up a negotiation between the sponsor and your principal investigator and your management. Fix a budget. This is the budget for the trial and this is what I need to be done. Okay, then patient recruitment. As I told you, 100 OPDs. When do you have time to remember the inclusion exclusion criteria of a trial? Basically, all clinical trials will have some stringent inclusion and exclusion criteria. So I think you know what is an inclusion exclusion criteria. So with certain factors, we can include a patient. With certain factors, we need to exclude a particular patient. Say somebody who has breast cancer is a good inclusion criteria for me, but somebody who has comorbidities like diabetes or cardiovascular diseases will be an exclusion. So for a person to remember this, keep this in mind at all point of time will be very difficult. So what I do is I just suggest my investigators to send patient with the inclusion criteria. That is a particular type of carcinoma of breast, whether it would be hormone positive, negative, whatever it is. So I would do the background check, I would do the inclusion exclusion criteria verification, and then go back to him saying that, see, this is what I found out. You can verify from your end and tell me if the patient is eligible for this study. So this will make their lives easier, and you can also recruit more patients. Your sponsor will also be very happy. So you can help very much in patient recruitment. Protocol amendment and refinements are usually from the sponsor end, and that should not be a problem most of the time, because you can continue with the existing protocol unless and until they give you a new protocol. Institutional review board and approvals. So you need to have a strong ethics committee in the hospital. I am a part of the academic ethics committee. We run BRNB and DNB courses in the hospital, who also need to do their thesis. So I'm a part of the academic ethics committee, not a part of research ethics committee, so because there's a conflict of interest. So your ethics committee members should be very active, and ethics committee will not meet every day for your purpose. So just because you have a clinical trial, they cannot conduct a meeting and approve your trials. So you need to get the sponsor do an expedite review or something, so that you can finish off the ethics committee related approvals very quickly and get ahead with the trial. Informed consent review and approval. So I think you would all have done some study in your fifth year family where it involves an informed consent, right? So you make a A4 sheet size informed consent. Whereas clinical trial consents are usually 50 to 100 pages. So you need to review that, and it is not one consent. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 consent. For taking an informed consent, I need to take a consent for that. So there are many consents which will be very difficult for an investigator or for the institutional review board to understand it. So you find the person in the review board or find the EC coordinator who can understand the entire informed consent process and put forth into the IRB and get an approval quickly. Okay, so I'll discuss all these things further in much more detailed manner. So a shift to exploring the need for clinical research unit model. So what a model CRU or a clinical research department should have. So just pay attention, maybe in the future you can set up a clinical research unit in one of the hospitals, since trials I told you are emerging very vastly and widely in India. Okay, so you need experienced investigators, they just need experience of one clinical trial in the past, which they would have done during their post-graduation or their further graduations. So somebody who is compatible, somebody who can understand what a trial is, somebody who is ready to drive it for you. So you can find one of them. Dedicated and trained staff. You need to have a department of dedicated and trained staff. We keep training them every 6 months. They'll have either a GCP training or a CP rules training. So training is very important because you tend to forget everything very quickly. So trained and dedicated staffs are very important. Drugger and archival storage. I'll discuss about the infrastructure in the later thing. And quality assurance management. So your sponsor will be trying to find out where you make a mistake and how to tell you that you're not doing the right job. So make a quality team inside your department. So whatever trials you are doing, ask somebody else to verify that. Whatever another person is doing, at least standard protocols. You cannot disclose the trial related information to a non-delegated person. At least how you drive your own site SOP is very important. As I told you, institutional ethics board and ethics committee needs to be established in a very well manner so that your trial gets approved very quickly. IT and infrastructures are also important, and hospital access. You need to, befriend everyone in the hospital. You should know a lab technician to the head of the institution to get your things done. So hospital access for everything is very important. Need for CRU. An ideal CRU may be beneficial to all the parties involved in it. So an investigator can concentrate on his competitive aspects like handling the research subject, managing the adverse drug reaction, need not bother about the administrative task. And research patient gets focused into constant medical supervision, and they'll have a good rapport towards you. They'll meet the consultant for 5 minutes, but you can talk to them for much longer time. You can convince them to get into the trial so that they'll get benefited out of it. Genuinely, you have to do it. Like, you should put forth the risk and benefits for them. Think that it is one of your relative and do it. That is what I do every time with my research subjects or any patient for that matter of fact. It's your uncle, your aunt, you're treating them and they should get better. That should be your goal. So with that, you can convince your patient saying that these are better treatment options for you, and it is coming to your hands where most of the patients do not have access to this. So go ahead, try this out, and then explain them the data. So usually phase 3 research, you'll have the phase 1 and phase 2 data or side effect profile. So you can tell them, see, these patients underwent these trials and so many had certain percentage of toxicity. When you put them the numbers in front of them, say 3%, 4%, they'll have the confidence to get into the trial and drive it much more smoothly. Okay, and the hospital or your institution where you work will get much more recognition as the patients are offered newer treatments and they get benefited out of this. The sponsor also gets benefited from a good CRU. They don't have to fight with the institution. They don't have to fight with the investigator for getting things done. So I think my friend will discuss about it, how a CRU and a sponsor should work hand in hand, so that ultimately what we need, we want a patient to get a treatment and get better and get out of the scenario as quickly as possible. Right? So quality analysis, the clinical research unit organizes and works under the umbrella of the ethics committee or the research committee, and which will down the ethical aspects of the trial, whether this trial is ethically okay for the subjects to undergo this. and it also evaluates and improves the research activity. As I told you, we have a site SOP. So basically, it will tell me what I should do, what I should not do. If I do something wrong, what is the corrective action? So that needs to be done by a quality analysis person. And then the root cause for any of the deviations from your protocol can be identified, and it can be rectified before somebody from DCGI or FDA comes and audits your hospital, right? So you don't have to give them findings and put your hospital in a bad situation. So rather, you can do a quality analysis and checks and make sure that it is free from all flaws. So involvement of a quality team delivers quality data right from the beginning of the trial. So coming to responsibilities of a principal investigator, I think this was discussed very detailedly yesterday. I'll just go over briefly about this. So patient recruitment is his primary goal, taking an informed consent. So none of the other person is allowed to take an informed consent. Usually informed consent in clinical research would be an audio-visual consent, and I told you it's a 100-page document. So what we do is we provide a brief about the important points which need to be discussed with the subject to the principal investigator, so that in the 5 to 8 minutes video what we capture as an audio-visual informed consent. So they include all these major points which usually involve the side effects of the trial, or what happens when you withdraw from the trial, when can you withdraw from the trial. These basic ethical aspects need to be discussed with respect to the informed consent. So that will be done by the principal investigator with the support of you. Without you, it will be very difficult for somebody to handle it. It will have 100 signatures to be put on each page from the subject end as well as from the investigator end. So that can be tackled easily by you. Patient care and medical management, as well as adverse drug reaction management. So this will generally be done by the principal investigation. You would do the documentation part of it. So go to the Sugam portal, upload the ADR details. So which is not very difficult. It's just protocol driven, and it's just like playing a computer game. You just keep uploading documents and need to put in whatever the regulatory authority requires you to provide. Okay. Management of protocol adherence. They have to make sure that you follow the protocol and patient receives the exact treatment what is prescribed to them. See, when you see the responsibilities of a CRO, that is much more than that of an investigator. So you are the master of this. You can drive this. So you need more. You have more responsibilities, and without you, the department cannot function, or an investigator cannot do a trial independently. So assess the PI in informed consent. I told you need an audiovisual consent, and lot of points to be included in that, which need to be discussed mandatorily, or else when a DCGI audit comes, they'll find out that your consent is improper, and it can create a bad mark to the institution where you work for. Case report form completion. So they have a tremendously built software which asks 1,000 questions about a subject. You need to keep uploading data, and you are very good at it. You have a very depth clinical knowledge, therapeutic knowledge. You know what a particular drug does, at what dose you will have to give it, right? So this becomes an easier task for you, but a little time consuming. So case report form. So what is case report form? You would have known. It's just a basic document which fills in the details of patient and also the ongoing treatment. So that needs to be transcribed into one of their websites what they provide. Coordination with the PI is very important. So maybe for recruiting the patient, or for the trial related details, you need to coordinate. So find someone who is compatible with you, and also develop a good relationship with everyone. Patient and sponsor related. My friend will talk patient related. As I told, build a good rapport. So make the patient your family, treat them as your family, do the best for them, because you cannot go wrong in treating a patient. So you have to do the best for them so that they can survive further. And thank you for all the things what you do. Logistics such as courier. So your sponsor keeps sending you medicines, your sponsor keeps sending you lab kits. So you have to deal with all those things, but that's okay. You're doing it for somebody's betterment. You're doing it for somebody to, get better and live a longer life. So nothing wrong in doing that. So we do logistics such as courier handling as well. Sample management. You're from a pharmaceutical background. You know how a sample needs to be processed. You need to centrifuge it at certain speed, at certain temperature, and then separate out the aliquot in a sterile manner and then hand it over to the sponsor. So sample management, we have a centrifuge, and we sample all our samples by ourselves. We don't take help of anybody, and then make sure it is a perfect sample which reaches the sponsor, because the sample doesn't go to one of the labs in India. It gets shipped to the US or where the global center is. So you need to have a perfect sample so that your site gets a good name and the patient gets good reports out of that. Infrastructure. So you will have various equipments like weighing scale, like a -80 deep freezer or a normal refrigerator or basically a thermometer. You need to calibrate everything. You should know that what an equipment does to the patient is absolutely right and flawless. So infrastructure upkeep is also your job. Find a biomedical engineer, have a good rapport with him, get all these calibrations done so that just a weight also doesn't go wrong, because dose calculation is basically weight based for most of the medication or body surface area based. Drug accountability and investigational product management. So one of the drug goes missing, you are held responsible. You have to answer thousands of people with respect to that. So keep the drug safely. You would be given many of the infrastructure for that. Keep it safely. And accountability is very important. You will have various software to enter all those accountability logs. So each and everything which the sponsor gives you is your whole and sole responsibility. Protocol adherence. So protocol is not just 2 pages protocol which is done in your academic research. These are vast, wide protocols. Each and every line of it can have an important point which you need to remember at any given point of time. So adhere to that, read it multiple times. So we train everybody on the delegated staffs on protocol. The sponsor comes and trains you once, but then you in detail need to know how to drive this trial, what can go wrong and how can I enact when it goes wrong. Okay. Compliance with timelines. I told stringent timelines, 24-hour timelines. You should maintain all those and drive the trial smoothly. Archival management is nothing but storing of your trial-related documents for a very long period of time. Say 25 years, 15 years is what the regulatory authorities and your sponsor will ask. So you should make sure the files doesn't get bitten by a rat, it doesn't get spoiled due to some moisture in the atmosphere. So this also becomes a very important responsibility for you, because these are legal documents. It can be used in the future for further research on the particular subjects or for post-marketing surveillance as well. So that is also your important duty. Financial tracking, as I told, it's very important for the institution for the finances to be done on time, and this needs to be done in coordinates with your sponsor. So 3 constructs which is essential for the successful execution of research into practice. So one is continuously evaluating what research you are doing, reporting and training. So coming to evaluation, which includes that the CRU management reviews the patient recruitment rates. So we keep having meetings every month or every 15 days once to find out what each study is doing, what each of my coordinator is doing in their particular study, how many subjects have we recruited, are we doing the trial in the right manner. Okay, so the checks need to be placed at every given point of time. Customer and patient satisfaction is very important. We generally have a feedback form for all the patients, so we take into account that very seriously. Where are we going wrong? What are we doing a mistake? Right? So this needs to be encountered. And protocol and SOP deviations along with root cause analysis. I'm not telling you cannot make a mistake. Humans are made to make errors, right? These errors can be corrected and it need not be repeated every given point of time. So this can be done by continuously evaluating what you do on a daily basis. And set timelines for study initiation from qualification visit to any query resolution. So do things quickly, because this is your site, these are your patients. You need many of them to get this particular treatment. Say the trial will be recruiting 500 patients globally, and your trial site, they'll tell you recruit at least 10 patients. You do the 10 patients quickly. Your sponsor will tell you recruit more. You can help more patients in that format. Okay, and there are some useful tools like a clinical research software which many of the corporate hospitals adapt, so that that helps you with some real-time reporting and recording of study events. It is not mandatory. You can do it by yourself. You don't need a software access to help you out with the trial. Third thing is which help maintaining the quality standards is continuous training. So you get exams, tests, right? Similarly, my department staffs also do that. So every 6 monthly once we revise their BCP, we train them with the CT rules, with all the regulatory requirements, and they get a test which they do it. So training is very, very important. Infrastructure. To set up a clinical research unit, what infrastructure do you need? Because if you know this, you can do it in a hospital where you can go and join and you can tell that I'm confident enough to start my own research department. I need these things. So you would need an exam room where you can recruit the patient, you can screen the patient, the PI will do that for you. Refrigerator and ambient drug storage. So many of your samples will require minus 80-degree storage. So you would require a minus 80-degree freezer and as well as a normal refrigerator which is calibrated, and the temperature of it is monitored all throughout the study period. You don't need excursion in temperature. It is supposed to be at 2 to 8. It should be at 2 to 8. It should not be at a 9 degree centigrade, which can degrade or decompose the drug. So which needs to be monitored stringently. Secure storage for supplies and records. I told you your records are what you are, what you're doing is what your record tells. You cannot tell that I did this yesterday, I did that today. Nobody is going to believe you. You need to put it on a paper and show them this is what I have done. So your records are very important to keep it safely. Staff and monitor work areas, then lock cupboards for storing source documents. I'll tell you what is a source document in the future. So those are very important. No rat should eat it, no moisture should contaminate it. So keep it secure. And you need a good hospital information system and internet facility to work in coordinates with the hospital as well. Cameras and designated room for audiovisual consenting. The audiovisual consenting should not have another camera or another person involved in that. Only dedicated staff member can record a audiovisual consenting. Room for specific activities, like you see, it is study specific. Certain studies might ask for an ECG. Some studies can ask for a PFT with BLCO. Those are specialized pulmonary function tests. Some could ask for a nerve conduction study. So make sure all this infrastructure is available with you. If not, find out another hospital which can give you a report which is very accurate. Okay, lab area for blood collection, centrifuges, storage and shipment. I told you, do all the processing of samples. You don't need another person. You are qualified enough to do even laboratory work. So you can centrifuge your own sample and send a very good sample to the sponsor. Lab certification. Usually all sponsors will ask if you are an NABL accredited lab. So discuss with your lab head, get a accreditation or a certification done. It's just basically a validation. So a central authority says that your lab is the best, everybody believes the lab is the best. So always get all these certification done. And archival facility, which is nothing but storage of your source documents and your clinical trial documents. So how to start a clinical research study? My PI wants to conduct a research study, and where do I begin is what the question is. So if somebody comes and asks you this, you should be able to provide them the answer and a solution to this as well. So what is a CDA? CDA is a confidentiality disclosure agreement. So whatever clinical trial protocols you get is very confidential. It should be between the sponsor and somebody who's driving the trial. So you have a document called as confidentiality disclosure agreement, which is signed by the institution and the investigator between the sponsor. So this doesn't mean that you have to go ahead with the trial. You have signed a document. It is mandatory. Not like that. You sign a confidentiality disclosure agreement, they release you a protocol which you can go through and later see if it is feasible in your setup for doing it, or if it is going to be beneficial for your patients, and if it is not going to cause any trouble to you. You can decide whether a protocol needs to be used in a particular center and go ahead with the trial, or you can reject it as and when required. But this agreement is very important for the sponsor to get confident that you are not going to disclose any of their information and keep their data safe while you drive the trial. Assessing protocol feasibility. This is very important. You cannot just take any protocol. Somebody will come and tell you that this is your budget, we'll pay you 10 lakhs if you recruit a patient, do this trial. No, you should not do it. You should do it which is helpful for your patient, which is safe for them, which your center can take. I cannot take up some cardiology study and do in an oncology center. I get 10 cardiology patients in the OPD. So it is wrong on your part to take up a trial which is not going to help you recruit more patients or give good benefit to the sponsor. So always assess the protocol and see if it's feasible for you. So is the protocol scientifically sound? Usually all the institutions will have something called as a scientific review board or a scientific committee, which will have members ranging from a molecular biologist to somebody who is as qualified as a senior medical oncologist. So they can go through the protocol and tell you whether it is scientifically sound and whether you can go ahead with that. So do we have access to the subject population? This is very important. I told you, cardiology study comes, I have no patient with atrial fibrillation or congestive heart failure, whereas I have patients with a lot of carcinomas and I can handle them. So see that whether you have access to that particular population. Are there any competing studies? Say you have same disease condition, two different companies approaching you for the study. Don't do that. Take only one study which is beneficial for your patients. Can we enroll the number of subjects requested in the allotted time? So they give you a time of say 1 year or 1 year 18 months to recruit the subjects. Say the subject strength could be 10 or 20. Can you do that? Does your site have so many number of subjects to enroll them in this particular study? And all the procedures and tests are done in your hospital. Is it feasible to do it? That you need to see. And how the study affects the subject care at your hospital is very important. They should, if the standard of care of treatment is good than the trial drug, please choose the standard of care. Tell the patient not to enroll in the trial. The standard of care is much better than the trial drug which is being given. So assess whether the current existing treatment is more beneficial than the trial medication. Are we an add-on site to the study? Sometimes they come saying that we want to put you as an add-on site. You do all the necessary documentation and don't get to recruit a patient. So those studies are something which we don't entertain. And do you have enough staffs and resources? Very important. One person cannot handle 10 trials. The protocols are very vast and stringent. So you need to have trained staff to go ahead with this study and run it flaw-free. So did the research staff complete GCP training? So your good clinical practice training is very important. We train them very frequently so that no mistakes happens during the clinical practice. So does the study have a favorable risk-benefit assessment? The benefit should always be first. So they should have more benefit, and risk will be there with any study you do. While you ride a bike, there is a risk, but benefit is you can reach a destination, right? So you need to always see the benefit, and some amount of risk is acceptable unless and until you can manage it. And does all the risks of the research being minimized, so that you can discuss with the sponsor and review whether these risks can be minimized. So that also need to be evaluated before choosing a protocol for your center. Facilitate contract preparation. So there is something called as a clinical trial agreement, which is signed between the sponsor, the principal investigator, and the institution. So we sign the CTA, and which will have a detailed review about what the study is, what they are going to do. Say subject gets some side effect, who is going to bear the charges for that? Everything will be reviewed in this particular agreement. So we are not legal experts. We know very less about law. So we take a legal expert's opinion, make sure we don't get into any trouble, and drive the trials smoothly. Facilitate clinical research budget plan. As I told you, budget is very important for the company where you work or the hospital where you work. Might not be an important aspect to you, but budget is very important. Try to negotiate with your sponsor, get in good tariffs so that you can manage the trial easily. So scientific review committee, this is very important for me. Usually sponsor asks only the institutional review board approval. They see only the ethical aspect of the study. You need somebody to see the scientific aspect of the study. Whether is it going to contribute to the science, whether it is going to help my patients is something which needs to be evaluated. So you will have a team of scientific members in the institution where you work, especially if it is a teaching institution. So their review, their inputs regarding certain things can modify the protocol also. You can tell the sponsor that this is what is suggested by my scientific member. Can you modify it accordingly? You can bring a change in the protocol as well by doing this. So your institution review board permission is definitely required, just to know that the ethical aspect of this proposal is acceptable and you're not doing anything against the law to harm a person. So just a brief description of institutional review board. I think you would have studied this a part of your curriculum. I tell you a real world scenario how the IRB works. So usually it consists of at least 5 members. It can be more. Our institutional review board has more than 10 members. So one should be a scientific member, one non-scientific, one unaffiliated member, and one should be sufficient enough and qualified enough to take care of diverse patients like your vulnerable subject. a patient who are pregnant, or it involves children in the trial, or somebody who has mental impairment. So somebody should know all about this. So we usually have a psychiatrist or a psychologist who can handle the vulnerable patient aspects, and at least one member should be knowing about the actual clinical aspects. Since it's an oncology setup, we usually have 2 to 3 medical oncologists in our ethics committee panel who can support us and give us the right suggestion for the trial and give an approval. And as and when, you can add an ad hoc member when required. So functions of an IRB is very known, and it is very open. So they review for any changes in a particular protocol. So they go about the written procedures, anticipate the problems and risks that can happen to the subject, and a majority of the people vote is required for going ahead with the study. Okay, and as I told you, authority to approve, require modifications or disapprove a research, required informed consent documentation approval, and annually they have to review. So every year they have to meet and ask you what you're doing with your trial, which is very important. So you cannot, put forth your knowledge into the IRB. So they are an independent body; they take their decision by themselves. You cannot involve them; that becomes a conflict of interest. But you can tell your principal investigator how to project the study in front of an institutional review board. So you go to a review board, tell them this is a CDK4/6 inhibitor. It targets this particular site. Nobody is going to understand. Your chairperson of the ethics committee would be, say, a pastor at a church, or he could be a judge of a Supreme Court. So he will not understand what is a CDK4/6 inhibitor, or he will not understand what a target drug is. It should be in a simple layman language, so which you can tell your principal investigator to put forth in such a way, saying that I'm going to give this treatment which is going to work in this way and going to give such benefit. So projecting it in an understandable way is very important in an ethics committee. The subject experts will review the protocol and they'll know what needs to be done for the particular thing. So putting forth in a layman language is very important. So there are certain criteria. So the informed consent, they will verify and see that whether it is appropriate for the subject. Informed consent is not only one consent. It should be in many languages. You don't see only Kannada speaking population Hubli. There can be Hindi, there can be English, there can be Tamil, Telugu, right? So you usually get an informed consent in all possible languages which your principal investigator can speak or understand, so that your consenting will become flawless. So all these will be projected in front of the ethics committee, which they go through and approve it. And adequate provision for monitoring, provision to protect the confidentiality of the subject. You cannot tell the person's name under whom you are conducting the clinical trial. Patient confidentiality is very important, which explains in all the rules and regulations. Okay, and additional safeguards to vulnerable subjects is very important. So usually there are different types of review: full board review, short board review, and full committee review is always necessary when there is more than minimal risk to the subject. So most of your clinical trials will have a full committee review, since the risk is maximum in that. So vulnerable population and sensitive topics such as certificate of confidentiality, research involving genomics or genetic analysis, all these would require a full committee review for them to approve the trial. So this is where you play an important role in IRB. You don't have any hand in deciding whether they decide to go ahead with the trial, whether they reject the trial. It is not in your hand. But the documents, what you submit to the institutional review board, plays an important role. So you would first give an IRB application form. Your EEC ethics committee will have an application form which you will be filling duly with all the necessary aspects, not doing a mistake and giving it to them. Then the informed consents in all languages, which is applicable for the particular state, and recruitment materials. Say there could be flyers. So sometimes advertising of certain clinical trials is acceptable inside a hospital premises. So you would be providing them the flyers. So making sure that that is not against any of the ethics rules. Updated version of the protocols, your case report forms, clinical study reports, that is your phase 1, phase 2, or your preclinical trial data, so that they can make sure that the trial is safe and secure. Investigator brochure, which will include the details about your particular product, what you're going to give the patient. Insurance statement, say something goes wrong with the subject, how are they going to compensate the subject or the institution? Financial disclosure, then signed agreement between both parties, regulatory approval. Only DCGI approved studies, usually the EC approves, so give the regulatory approval as well, and CD and GCP of all the staffs involved in the clinical trial. So once the IRB approves the clinical trial, they give you an approval letter, you can go ahead and start the site initiation visit in coordinates with your sponsor. So see, this is how an IRB works. So you submit the protocol, an initial application for the IRB, scientific review is done to see the scientific aspect of the study, then administrative review, pre-IRB review, and formal IRB review done with a full quorum of members, and then the protocol gets approved. So your principal investigator will be the one projecting the study in all these different facets of ethics committee. So next we'll be discussing about something file. In brief, we'll discuss. So what is a trial master file? It is a compilation of all the documents that the clinical trial be conducted or regulatory requirements which need for a clinical trial to be conducted. So it plays a very important role in ensuring that the trial is run very successfully by the investigator, sponsor, and the institution. So it needs to be maintained all throughout the trials. There can be some addition of documents which happens at the beginning, during, and after the completion of a particular trial. Okay. So essential documents of the TMF, so it should have all the checklist, reports of the previous studies that has been conducted, a complete information about the investigational medical product, and your ECRF forms, data management plan, data validation, data review, minutes of the meetings, statistical analysis, what they use for this particular study, and documentation from GMP and of the packaging and further information of the IMP is very important, which will be placed in the trial master file. So this trial master file is given by the sponsor. You keep adding documents and you preserve it until the end of your trial. Next is the case report form. So case report form documents the data which you capture, and it is used by the site and sponsor, defined by the protocol endpoints, and it gives inputs to the study report. Say you collect a case report in a paper form. When will you do the analysis of that? And it is not you who is going to do the analysis. Your global team from the US or UK is going to do an analysis of this particular trial, right? So we usually capture it in an electronic platform so that interim analysis can be done at any given point of time. So it's an electronic or paper document used in clinical trial, preferably an electronic document to collect data, process, analyze, and to prepare the report. We use this. Sponsor and your investigator put forth a good CRA completion guidelines, which you need to follow and fill it at a given time point or a timeline. You will be given a separate password access for accessing the CRF, and only you can do this work. You cannot delegate to another person. So all the data should be collected in a regulatory manner format. You should not disclose the patient confidentiality requirements, say their name, age, or any other aspects, and collect, and there should be no duplication of data. Next is source data. This is very important. You will be the person key for doing the source data management. So say source data is something which will define all informations in the original records and certified copies of clinical findings, observations, and other activities used to reconstruct the trial. So you have done a trial, you have given the medication to the trial, but you know that, say some regulatory authority comes tomorrow, how will they know that you have done this? So you should provide a source document which says that you have done all these things. Right from the height and weight, what you evaluate for a subject, and right from the vitals, what you check, needs to be documented accurately so that what you do is reflected in the source document. Okay. So original data records, clinical office charts, so it could be a vital charts, your laboratory sheets, your pharmacy dispensing of medication records, your drug administration records, and it could be X-rays, MRI films, MRI reports. All these form a very good source document, and also the documentation from the person running the trial is also a source documentation. There will be also something called as a CRC source document, where you tell the sponsor what exactly you did right from the beginning the patient enters your hospital. So source document is very important. Many people can find a lot of flaws in that. Make it flawless. You have the capacity and capability to do this in a flawless way. What is the purpose of this? As I told you, reconstruct the trial that has happened. I am new. I am the DCGI auditor who comes, and when I see your source document, I should know what exactly you've done 5 years ago for this particular trial subject, right? So they should be able to reconstruct it. It should be so precise, accurate, and should have all the information necessary for the trial. And it should enable an independent observer to reconfirm the data during the trial, before and after the trial. All data required to the particular trial needs to be documented. Okay. So there is some principle, and this is a statement which is stated by all the researchers. What is not documented is not done at all. You, I think, will have a log book in your college, right? So if you write that you have done this particular procedure, your principal or your HOD will approve that you have done it. Say it orally, nobody agrees it. So what is not documented is not done, and document what is not done as well, so that they know a clear picture of what is not done and what is being done. Always be clear in your documentation. So this is something everybody follows, the ALCOA principle. So attributability. So your data must be attributable, which means that all data must be linked to a specific individual, typically the person who generated the record. Whoever writes the particular record, they should sign it. So it makes it attributable that you have generated this particular report. Legibility. It cannot be like a prescription which is written. It should be very legible and clear that 100 people can understand what your source data represents. Contemporaneous. It should be real-time record. You cannot write something today and sign and date it after 1 week. It should be right now at this moment. You should do a contemporaneous data recording. Original data. It should not be, say, a person has recorded vitals in a small chip and then you rewrite it again. No, it should be original. Once written in a document, that is the final one. So original data needs to be put, and accurate. It should be very accurate and error-free. So common findings, this your sponsor always try to find mistakes in your source document. So eligibility criteria could not be confirmed. There is no document which says that these are the criteria and patient met all of this and they are eligible for the trial. Multiple records from the same data point, say vitals recorded at 5 data points or lab tests of 5 copies. So that is not right. You need to have 1 copy which is completely accurate. Discrepancies in records confirm that the primary endpoint of the study is not very efficacious, and clinically non-significant lab ranges should be also documented. Say somebody has a hemoglobin of 16, so that doesn't mean they have polycythemia. That means that it's a non-significant lab value. So you have to make sure that the sponsor knows it is a lab value which is out of your range, but it is clinically non-significant as well. Missing pages from the subject interviews or your CRF, so that also is something which we find number of times. Numerous AE reported, but it is not documented. Any small event which happens to the patient, which is other than the normal things mentioned in the protocol, is an adverse event, and if it happens in a grade severely, that is called as a serious adverse report, and all these needs to be captured in the CRF. Incomplete or incorrect documentation, regardless of anything, is considered as a wrong document. Especially it could be with respect to drug disposition or drug dispensing or drug mixing. So how can we improve this? You can improve this data setup or source data documentation. Follow the ALCOA principle. Make sure that the principal investigator is also involved in the source documentation. He also does it appropriately, and have a good site SOP. We have an SOP which states that how a document should be maintained and should be written. So follow that very strictly. Serious adverse event, you would have read so much about this pharmacovigilance serious drug event. So what is it, what we actually do in clinical practice? So death, life-threatening adverse drug experience or patient hospitalized for more than 24 hours, persistent or significant incapacity or sustainable disruption of the ability to conduct normal life activities, any abnormality, congenital or birth defects, and important medical events are the serious drug adverse reaction. And an adverse reaction which becomes more severe and exceeds to a grade which is very difficult to manage is considered as a serious adverse drug reaction. This is not a flaw, this is not a mistake, it is bound to happen in a clinical trial. And what you have to do is you have to inform people that this has happened, so that another subject at a different site can be protected from this, and they can get a good data out of it which can be used for future research. Okay, all you have to do is within 24 hours notice your CDSCO or your licensing authority that this has happened with lot of necessary documents. You also inform your sponsor as quickly as possible, inform your ethics committee, inform your institution. You're not doing anything wrong. It happened because of the investigational product, which needs to be told openly and frankly to all these authorities, who will take the further decision on what needs to be done with the research subject or the investigational product. Okay. Last thing we will be discussing is archival facility. Very important archival. As I told you, your documents that represent what you have done. So storage of these documents is called as an archival facility. So it is very relevant to all the clinical trial, and usually a trial close or phase plays a major role in the archival of these documents. Your archival can be done in-house inside your hospital where you can take care of that, or you can outsource it to other vendors who can do the archival. So it should be in compliance with all the regulatory requirements, and data submitted to the regulatory authority should be archived. Data integrity, it should be tamper proof. Somebody cannot come tomorrow and make 120 by 80 BP readings as 200 by 180, right? So it should be tamper proof. You have to keep it safe so that nobody can come and change your data. Transparency and accountability. So whatever you document will be there, and it should be there at all given point of time, so that somebody can come and access it at a later point of time and review the data. Future reference. Say some researchers would want to conduct further reviews on those documents what you have kept. So these original documents can be referred back for further research. So we keep the documents archived for this purpose. Scientific integrity. Say they want to validate the clinical trials finding. So for that we would need this documents for sharing the data and for the reproducibility of a particular trial related outcome. Long-term monitoring, say they are going for a post-marketing surveillance of a particular drug, you need these data for them to achieve the post-marketing surveillance data and produce a good evidence-based medicine for this drug to go into market and for it to help many people. Okay. With this is how you set up a clinical research unit at the hospital. This is what you can do. This is how you can build your own research unit, drive your own trials, and be a master of it. So if you master all these skills, which was told by me to you in the span of 1 hour, if you know all these things, you can become a researcher. So there's nothing which is rocket science or something to learn from this. You can do it. You have learned this all these 6 years. When you have patients to do a course which is as long as 6 years, you can do clinical research. So you would have developed the patience and the tolerability towards time. So this is something which can be done. Do you have any questions? No questions. So it was, I think, very frank, outspoken discussion. So anyway, so I told you, I also did not want to continue it in India. Do this in India. There are a lot of trials which are emerging in India. They want to be established in India. They want to work here and set up departments in various hospitals. Government hospitals don't have the clinical research department yet. They don't know how to do this. They don't know how to organize it or run with it. So you can be one of the person to do this. And also, being a CP is not a small task. It is not just doing audits. It is not just drug chart review. It is not just drug interaction computing. So it is much more than that. You can provide a lot of information and improve in patient care. So please consider all these things seriously and choose a career path which can improve the patient outcomes in India. Okay. So since you don't have any doubts, thank you from my end for giving me such an opportunity to encourage you people. I want to see you all in India at various levels, whether it is an industry or hospital. Establish yourself, speak for yourself, make sure that you express what you know and try to learn what you don't know. So you can learn anything from even a small kid to an elder person. So always have the energy to learn and ask questions repeatedly. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for an informative session. I request the speaker to kindly come forward to accept our token of appreciation. I request VP Manjunath sir, Dr. Munali sir, and all the HODs to come over the dais to bestow the honor. I request Dr. Shivkumar sir to come over the dais.
Chairperson of this session. Sir, is also, he has not mentioned his biodata, is also President of Pharmacy Teachers Association of Canada. Any updates in the profession of pharmacy? Any updates in the change of syllabus, Pharm D or D Pharma? Here's all the information. You can have his number and contact anytime. To give the information about the pharmacy professional, what are the developments taking place throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you. See that as a chairperson of this scientific session, it's my pleasure to highlight our content of delivery. Really, I appreciate our efforts taken for delivering this content. I can tell you that if I stand before the mirror, I can see my image. It's true with everyone. See, whatever she tried to deliver the content, it is definitely a reflection of how sincerely she worked in the Shankar Cancer Hospital. Truly. See that with 10 or 4 or 5 years of experience, her journey of this clinical trial in this cancer setup hospital in Shankar Hospital, dedicatedly she served with lot of joy. She delivered the content. I have never seen any inhibitions and any this always she was with great joy. She has delivered the best thing. She focused that we never underestimate any other life sciences who are all my colleagues in the department, who are my colleagues as a clinical trial personnel. We never underestimate that, it is true. But how best being family graduates and MPharm pharmacology graduates, postgraduates and MPharm pharmacy practice, clinical pharmacy practice graduates, you will definitely having this ability and capacity to attract the sponsors, the other life science persons who are working in this setup, the services what they delivered with 8 years of experience. What she highlighted that people like you that is pharma background with 1 or 2 experience, you can do wonders so that you can attract the sponsors. This is what she said. So there is a lot of scope for all of you, and you must work dedicatedly when you join such industry. Then things are possible. She has delivered about this the roles and responsibilities of sponsors, principal investigator, and this importance of this regulatory agencies, DGHS, Drugs Director General of Health Services, CDSCO, Drugs Control General of India, everything. And you are all studying all these papers in PharmD, clinical research, pharmacovigilance, pharmacoeconomics, pharmacoepidemiology, and clinical toxicology. What's not there? But by gaining this knowledge of all these subjects in PharmD program and MPharm pharmacology curriculum and this MPharm pharmacy practice also, definitely you make use of this while you are learning. Sincerely put your efforts in learning. As and when the organizations are conducting such seminars, then these conferences, please learn the things with dedication. Okay, it's not possible to organize oftenly these kind of seminars and workshops, and resource persons are also not available so easily. With great efforts of management, principal, and all your teachers, it is possible. And I am sure these 2 days of the yesterdays and today's will be a fruitful and enriching your knowledge. And once again, on my personal behalf and on behalf of everyone who are all gathered here, I congratulate and I thank. And I would like to tell, she is not only contributing as clinical pharmacologist and a clinical pharmacist in the cancer hospital, she is also supporting her husband as wife as a clinical pharmacologist and pharmacist to her husband pulmonologist. It's a joy to inform you all. Thank you. See that already it is asked that, and any queries and any doubts with respect to this Dr. Manasa's presentation, please open up and be interactive so that you will learn definitely.
Hello. My name is Kiran, working as a clinical research coordinator at Prognosis Clinical Team. So my question is, as you said, to conduct a clinical trial, we need a budget, and it's a very difficult and tedious process. May I know what are the difficulties or how to set a perfect budget?
See, our sponsor will give you a budget, not just a budget, right? So, your mother is going to tell you her pocket money is 5K. Don't you negotiate with her and make it 10,000. Similarly, you need to negotiate your budget and improve so that your institution will benefit from it. Your tariffs will be different from what they define. Say a PET CT scan could cost up to 20,000 and what they say could be 10,000. So you need to negotiate with them and set up a tariff so that your institution gets benefit from it. So that is what the budget is. Let's say CRCTs, they will offer you 5,000 for each subject, that is not sufficient. If you tell that there is more work, you should have more for that. That is very important.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me. Good morning. My question was, you just explained what are the need for CR. So I just wanted to ask the rules, regulations to implement that CRU.
See, there is no definite rule. You just need an approval from the regulatory authority to establish the department. And it should be registered with the DCGS portal, saying or Zoom portal, saying that you are a site eligible to conduct studies. A principal investigator who has a prior experience should be registered into the portal. And once you get the DCGI registration, then you can go ahead and start the clinical trial. There is the only regulatory requirement to start a clinical trial. Thank you for all those questions. That indicates that you could listen to what I say to understood of what I do.
Now I would like to call Dr. Pragnashri A. Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmacy Practice, to escort our respectable chairperson for the second session. Dr. Prakash Sir, Professor and Principal, Akshaya Institute of Pharmacy, Tumkur. Dr. Charusheela PR, Clinical Research Associate, AstraZeneca, Bangalore. Our beloved Principal President of today's conference, Dr. A.H.M. Vishwanath Swami Sir, KLE College of Pharmacy, Hubli. Our Organizing Secretary, Dr. Sanat Kumar Nyamgoda Sir, Department of Pharmacy Practice, to the dais. I request our beloved Principal and President of today's conference, Dr. A.H.M. Vishwanath Swami Sir, KLE College of Pharmacy, to welcome our today's chairperson, Dr. Prakash Sir, and the resource person, Dr. Charusheela PR Ma'am, by presenting the bouquet as a token of gratitude. Now, I would like to call Dr. Pragnashri A. Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Pharmacy Practice, to introduce Chairperson Dr. Prakash Sir for the second session. Morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to welcome Dr. Prakash Tigari sir, a distinguished figure in a field of pharmacology, to our gathering today. Dr. Tigari sir's journey in academia and research is nothing short of inspiring. With a solid educational background, including a B.Pharm from SCS College of Pharmacy, Harpanahalli, and M.Pharm in